The morning had barely begun when the wind carried a strange stillness across the wide Montana plains. The frost glimmered on the tall grass like scattered diamonds, and a pale mist rolled low over the earth. Inside a lonely ranch house at the edge of the valley, Samuel Harrow pulled on his worn leather jacket and stepped outside, breathing in the sharp bite of dawn. He was a mountain of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, and rough around the edges, the kind of man whose silence carried more weight than most people's words. Life had been quiet for Samuel ever since his parents passed, and the years swallowed his youth in endless work. But that quiet was shattered by a faint, hesitant knock on the front door. He turned, surprised. No one ever came this far out. The second knock came, softer but desperate. Samuel crossed the porch, boots creaking against the old boards, and when he opened the door, his breath caught. There stood a little girl no older than 7, barefoot in the cold. Her cheeks were smudged with dirt, her tangled blonde hair clung to her face, and her torn orange dress fluttered against her skinny legs. She looked up at him, eyes wide and shining with fear. "They beat my mama," she whispered, her voice trembling as if each word hurt. "She's dying." For a moment, time froze. Samuel had seen many things in his life. Storms that tore fences apart, wildfires that swallowed the land, but nothing like this child's face. Something inside him stirred, something buried deep under years of loneliness. Without asking another question, he dropped to one knee, his massive frame casting a long shadow over her. The faint smell of blood hung in the air, and he knew she wasn't exaggerating. "Where is she?" he asked softly. The girl pointed toward the woods beyond the frozen field. "Please hurry." Samuel didn't think twice. He grabbed a wool blanket from inside, wrapped it around the girl's shoulders, and lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "Hold on tight," he said. Then he began running, through the open pasture, past the fence line, and into the thicket where the cold air bit at his face. The girl clung to him, whispering directions through chattering teeth. Her name, he learned between gasps, was Clara. When they reached a small clearing, Samuel spotted a crooked shack half buried in snow and shadow. Smoke trickled weakly from a rusted pipe, and the door hung off its hinges. He pushed it open with his shoulder and froze. On the floor lay a woman, Clara's mother, bruised and beaten nearly beyond recognition. Her face was swollen, her lips split, and her breathing came in shallow, broken gasps. Yet when she saw her daughter, her eyes softened, filled with both pain and relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Samuel knelt beside her, jaw tightening as rage flashed through him. This wasn't some accident. He could see the marks, deliberate, cruel. Whoever had done this had meant to break her. He didn't need to hear the story to know it was evil. Without hesitation, he wrapped the woman in his coat, lifted her into his arms, and said firmly, "You're safe now." The journey back felt endless. Clara ran alongside him, her little feet crunching through the frost, never once letting go of his sleeve. When they finally reached the ranch, Samuel carried the woman inside, laid her on his own bed, and began tending to her wounds with the steady hands of a man who'd patched up injured horses and mended his own scars. He cleaned the cuts, wrapped bandages, and fed her spoonfuls of water until she drifted into a fragile sleep. Days passed in quiet determination. Samuel did everything: cooking, fetching water, mending, watching over them as if fate itself had given him a new purpose. Clara rarely left her mother's side, except to chase the chickens or help Samuel gather firewood. Slowly, warmth began returning to the ranch, laughter echoing through walls that had known only silence. Her name was Marin. As her strength returned, she told Samuel bits of what had happened. A group of men had come to their old home looking for money that wasn't there. When she refused them, they turned violent. Clara had escaped through the back door and ran until her legs gave out, praying someone would listen. By some miracle, that someone was Samuel. Weeks passed, and life began to feel different. Samuel, who once woke every morning to the sound of his own footsteps, now woke to Clara's giggles and Marin's soft singing. The three of them ate together at the old wooden table, light from the fireplace dancing across their faces. Marin's gratitude shone in her eyes each time she looked at him, and though few words were spoken, a quiet understanding grew between them, a bond stronger than blood, built from pain, kindness, and second chances. But peace in this world never comes without a test. One bright morning, the distant sound of horses broke through the calm. Samuel stepped outside and saw 3 men approaching, rough, sneering, their eyes filled with malice. He knew immediately who they were. The past had come calling. The men dismounted, smirking. "We heard you've been harboring someone who don't belong to you," the leader said, spitting on the ground. "Hand him over, cowboy. Ain't your business." Samuel stood tall, his massive frame filling the doorway. Inside, Marin clutched Clara close, trembling. His voice came out low, steady, and cold as iron. "You'll leave now," he said. "There's nothing here for you." The man laughed. "Or what? You gonna stop us?" Samuel's eyes hardened. "Try me. For a long moment no one moved. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The men saw it in his face, the resolve of a man who had nothing to lose, but everything worth protecting. They shifted uneasily. Finally, one of them muttered something under his breath, and they turned their horses around, disappearing down the road in silence. When the sound of hooves faded, Samuel exhaled slowly, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the release of it. Inside, Marin rushed to him, tears in her eyes. "You didn't have to risk yourself for us," she whispered. He met her gaze and said quietly, "Yes, I did." That evening, the three of them stood outside as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky burned orange and gold, and the land stretched endlessly around them, wild, beautiful, and alive. Clara took Samuel's hand in hers, Marin's in the other. For the first time in years, Samuel felt something he hadn't known he was missing: family. The knock that had begun as a cry for help had changed everything. The man who once lived in silence now found his world filled with laughter and love. And though the scars of the past would never fully fade, together they built something stronger, a life stitched together by compassion and courage. If you believe that kindness can change lives, remember this story, because sometimes it takes just one open door, one act of mercy, to remind us that even in a cold world, the heart can still find its way home.